to call now and to invite Diane to present her her book.
I do like a book launch. It's a real sense of achievement, and to have an omnibus edition of all these books is pretty fantastic. But it's also, I think, testimony to the vibrancy of the field, whether you call it policy diffusion, policy transfer, or something else. So there's obviously something going on in this field. This particular book that was put together by myself and two colleagues at the Centre for Policy Studies was our anniversary project at the Central European University. It was meant to be a 10-year anniversary project, but we were too exhausted after having stayed alive as a centre for 10 years. It took us another 5 years to get around to it. And at that point in time, it was on the cusp of about 30 years since transition in the region, and about 25 years of the accession of the new member states to the European Union. So we embedded this book project in examining the after effects of joining the European Union and the degree to which accession had been successful or not. So we were looking at the extent to which the vast raft of legislation and regulation that came to the new member states, the extent to which it stuck, the degree to which the new member states were compliant, and the degree to which they'd absorbed the norms and understandings of what it meant to be a member of the European Union. And I guess that what we came up with was a very mixed picture, okay, in the sense that it wasn't just about the European Union. It was also about other international institutions that were players in the processes of policy diffusion. So in the chapter on domestic violence, for example, it wasn't just about the kind of advocacy that was coming from the Commission, it was also the United Nations, and in particular the norms and principles that came from CEDAW, the Commission for the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, that were also very important. So it wasn't transfer from one institution, it was a mishmash of different sets of ideas and principles that were in accord, that were being interpreted in the area of domestic violence policy. With regard to pensions, there are two chapters in the book on pension reforms. What the authors found was that there was significant policy transfers, but there was also significant reversals as well. So one of the outcomes has been very significant policy volatility driven by electoral changes and party politics that has meant that the tractability of policy transfer is very variable in the region. So you're seeing it a reversal in Hungary, but much more significant swings in policy in countries like Romania and the Czech Republic. And then I mentioned the international institutions, but you also had local actors that were very important in interpreting European norms and also in perverting those norms as well. So in the chapter on Euro-regions, which is not specifically a European Union policy, you see the use of funds being brought for cross-border collaboration in the new accession member states, being used by local authorities and mayors to promote ethno-nationalist policies on the ground, rather than encouraging greater familiarity and acceptance of European values, however you might want to define it. And then there were also some very strange experiments of trying to make European funding fit local circumstances. So one of the more unusual examples that came up in the book was how local mayors could get funding for certain European valued projects, but could not get funding for the particular projects and services that they needed on the ground. So bus shelters were needed in a number of villages in Hungary, but they couldn't get European funding for that. But they could get funding for viewing platforms to observe local nature. So what a group of very inventive mayors did was build bus shelters all over the countryside and stick a viewing shelter on top. Okay, so that's inventive, it's an interpretation, it worked, it suited the commission, but it also suited many villages and mayors around the countryside of Hungary. That's it. Oh, one more thing. 35% discount. Right.